thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Christine Forbes. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Access Services and Reference Librarian at Shenandoah University in Winchester, Virginia. Today, I'm going to share using hashtag Throwback Thursday to teach and share archival treasures. And I promise that's the last time I'm going to say hashtag. I'd like to start with how this came to be doing Throwback Thursdays. Firstly, our library team is relatively small, and it's the responsibility of our Access Services Department to manage social media as an outreach tool. I had a really talented and creative part-time employee who would work on social media with me, and she also worked on scanning projects with our archives librarian. And as she was coming across fun and unique finds in the archive, she decided she wanted to share those on social media, and thus Throwback Thursday was born in February of 2024. However, she left the library in October of 2024, and I took over the project. And as the sole person managing our social media, I knew I needed to make some changes to my workflows so that I could continue doing Throwback Thursdays, or other social media posts, and the other responsibilities I have in my role. So I've outlined some tips that I think would be helpful for anyone who wanted to start Throwback Thursdays, or maybe just revamp your archives presence on social media as a teaching tool. The first thing I suggest is developing your focus. What's your why, your goals, your audience? I decided that my goal was to increase the awareness of the university archives through these posts. I wanted to show users how to access the archives, who they could reach out to for help. I also knew I wanted to share a variety of materials. So far, I've really only highlighted images and things from yearbooks and some clippings from student-run newspapers. I like to share more materials in the future. And then I had to think about our audience. And I decided that the audience for these posts wasn't just current students. It was anyone who had an interest in SU's history. And I also wanted to hold myself accountable, and I wanted to make sure that I consistently posted every Thursday to stay true to the Throwback Thursday name. Here's a look at our audience. This was a really interesting thing I wanted to share. So this post was from January of this year, and it was just a few photos of a snowy campus from the 90s. And this is its postings on Facebook, but I also post to Instagram as well. It didn't get a lot of views. However, we did get to hear from two alumni who got to reflect on their time at SU and share their fond memories with us. And it's these types of moments with our community that's really special, and why we continue posting to Facebook, even though it doesn't always do as well as our Instagram posts. Tip number 2 is to plan in advance. I am juggling a lot with social media and my other responsibilities, so I knew I needed a plan. I printed off some blank calendars, and I wrote in every single social media post that I wanted to have every single day, including the Thursday post for Archive or Throwback Thursday. You can see the April dates there. I have jazz, dance, tennis, and music therapy listed. And the reason I decided to do music therapy is because that last week of April, our music therapy program was celebrating their 50th anniversary. So we went through the archives and found some photos from yearbooks that we could share and be a part of this moment of celebrating their anniversary with them. What was really fun was we also got 3 link clicks to our digital archive, which was still relatively new at the time. So 3 is a pretty good number for us. Here's another example. I posted this the Thursday before our spring formal, and it was just a variety of photos from formals in the past at SU, and it also received 1 link click, and these are its numbers on Facebook, so it did pretty well. It reached a fair number of people on our Facebook. Here's tip number 3, and that is to make designing easy. I use Canva for our posts, We do have a paid subscription, but you can do a lot with a free one as well. And one thing I did to make it easy for myself is I made a template of what these archives posts, these Throwback Thursdays would look like. We have a hashtag in the upper left-hand corner that says Archives Thursday. The background is generally the foreground photo, but enlarged and faded or more transparent. And then we also usually have our logo in the bottom corner. It could be either left or the right. It kind of depends on what the photo looks like. But by having a template, I can make quite a few of these posts at one time. Once I gather all the photos or what I'm going to highlight, I already have a plan, and it makes it much more time efficient. And since you have these posts already made and they're batch made, I found that using a scheduling tool is really helpful. We only post to Facebook and Instagram, so Meta Business Suite meets our needs. I can schedule weeks in advance using Meta Business Suite, and I save a lot of time doing that. Hootsuite has been popular in the past. I'm not sure if it still is, but it is a scheduling tool option as well. Tip number 5 is to tag others in your post. We want our message to get to people. We want to show our community what's available in the archives and what the archive has to offer. And when you tag people, it increases the number of views that your post can get. So this is just some data here about the views for a baseball post that I did. And at the bottom, you should be able to see that it says at SU Hornets, and SU Hornets is tagged there. That's our athletics department. And I think having them tagged in the post really increased our number of views. And here's another example of a then and now photo where I tagged the marching band in this color guard post. And I think it also helped us get more views, but also again, the bottom half of that is telling how our users, how our viewers or researchers can go to the archives, how they can make an appointment and see these things themselves. Tip number 6 is recruit others for help, whether there's a coworker or if you have student employees or an intern. There's lots that they can do to help you. So this is Todd. He is the Access Services Associate at SU. He's on my team. And him and I work together to do these posts. Our workflow is that because I have these themes or these posts planned out, I create folders in a shared Google folder that have soccer, jazz, etc. labeled on them. And Todd goes into the digital archive and he looks for materials that have, soccer photos or a time that jazz was mentioned in the student newspaper, and he will save those to the Google folder. That way I can go look at what he's picked out, what Todd has found to be fascinating. I usually do also go in the digital archive and I take a peek and see if there's something that I want to share or if our archives librarian has something to share. But Todd helps me by moving along the process of finding treasures to put on our Throwback Thursday post. Tip number 7 is to stay up to date with what's doing well on social media if you want. I don't do trends and I don't do dance videos, but I do from time to time like to read the literature and to see what is doing well with social media. So for example, this article here, Unveiling the Feed, Academic Libraries Instagram Unpacked. The findings say that if you use carousels, shorter captions, if you have emojis in your captions, and if you use hashtags, you are more likely to get more views and more people will see your posts. And a carousel is just more than one photo in a post. So this is one of our posts. It was highlighting our Apple Blossom princesses. Apple Blossom is a big festival in Winchester, and SU has a princess that is in the festival each year. So there's that example of just a carousel. Once I read that article, I have continuously done carousels each time. Here's some of my future ideas, some of our future plans. I would like to do more Throwback Thursdays that involve instruction. So more of explaining and teaching archives etiquette, what to expect. I'd love to do a post where there are more physical items that they can see and how to handle those items. also how to search the digital archive and find things there. I'd also like to involve our researchers more where they can ask the archives librarian a question and also pull them what they want to see. What do they want to see from the archives? And lastly, I'd love to do a show and tell with the archives librarian's favorite treasures from the archive. There really are so many possibilities and so many ways to share and teach the archive through social media. And that's all I have for today. So thank you.
Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Duckworth. And, I am the University Archivist and Manager of Historical Collections at Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, Oregon. Before I get going, let me share a link to a Google folder that has my slides and the text of my talk available in case anyone wants to access those directly. I've been at OHSU for close to 9 years, and for the majority of that time, personnel in historical collections have struggled to reach any students with educational offerings or to get archival materials used in any courses. We've had one course come each year, mainly because the professor was really into tracing back historical thoughts and wanted her students to lay hands on historic materials. But even with that example, she was more focused on old journals than on archival collections, as she wanted them to see what other articles were being written at the time and to see advertisements and whatnot. One of my earlier efforts at finding some teaching opportunities was a data mining project where I delved into our syllabus management system and searched for already existing courses that might offer good opportunities for inclusion of historical materials rather than trying to create new courses. I then reached out to faculty in the courses I found, and I got absolutely zero responses. Years later, my supervisor somewhat repeated that process and got similar results, so I'm fairly certain nothing has changed in that regard. Something I've only recently learned while looking into giving this talk is that med students are particularly hard to reach and seem to be a sort of special case even within other STEM archives or collections. However, in the past couple of years, we've begun taking part in these sort of extracurricular enrichment sessions that the School of Medicine offers for the undergraduate medical education students each term. Undergraduate is confusing here, as those are actually graduate students in med school, but before they get to the whole residency and fellowship stage, which is their graduate education. The enrichment sessions offer multiple tracks or themes and can be taught by anyone, not just medical faculty. And the first one we did was a straight up introduction to primary sources, how to find them, how to evaluate them, how to read a finding aid, etc. Students learned a bit, but the reviews weren't all that stunning, so we really didn't think to repeat it. Then last year, I was listening to a Code Switch podcast. Code Switch, and I quote from the website here, tackles the subject of race with empathy and humor and explores how race affects every part of society. If you don't already listen to it, you really should start. Anyway, this episode titled In the World of Medicine, Race-Based Diagnoses Are Still Very Real, looked at keloid scarring, among a few other conditions, and the generally accepted figure that people of African descent tend to get keloids at a rate 16% higher than whites. The episode traced that figure back through the literature to discover where it came from and found that it stemmed from a 1931 non-peer-reviewed article by one author who based his numbers on 1,205 Black adult workers in the Belgian Congo. More recent studies show much lower rates, but the science is still out on the true cause of keloid scarring. However, the 16% number was still taught in medical education until quite recently, and maybe still is taught in some places. This podcast episode gave me an idea for an enrichment session. And I kind of dislike teaching these kinds of things on my own. Maybe it's the dreaded imposter syndrome. Maybe it's my autistic self, scarred from decades of social and professional exclusion. But our library is a pretty collaborative space. So when I mentioned the idea to my boss, we decided it would be a good pairing for me to work on this project with Pam Pierce, our publishing and data services manager. She also has a background in archives and a history of teaching in the school's narrative medicine program. And so she was pretty excited by the idea as well. So we put the proposal together and submitted it to the School of Medicine. We did our background research on lots of different medical conditions that frequently get race-based diagnoses, and we waited to see who would sign up, if anyone. While we had the general goals of teaching the students research and critical thinking skills, we also were focusing on marketing the skills of our library staff and faculty more than just the things we have. So this session wouldn't use any archival holdings. It would highlight the skills we are experts in. As the date approached, we got the list of registrants and were a bit surprised to see that the class reached our max number of students. Once we were in the session, we started by reviewing our LibGuide on using and accessing primary sources. This was the guide created for our first enrichment session, but in this case, we breezed through it pretty quickly. We wanted students to know the basics and also just to know that that guide existed, but we didn't want to focus on that stuff since we'd already learned that it wasn't that engaging for the students. Then we reviewed the keloid scar research as an example of how to chase history back in time. At that point, we asked the students to pick a condition and do their own research in real time while Pam and I assisted them by answering questions, helping track down sources that could be accessed online, and giving them some alternatives when they reached a dead end, like what happens when your original source is in a language you don't speak. Then they all shared out their findings, both about the research process and about what they had found. Unsurprisingly, there was a significant amount of offensive stuff, which we had already warned them would likely be the case. And the students seemingly loved this session. These are just some of the positive comments we got from the follow-up survey the UME folks sent to the students. This was an extremely fun, engaging, and informative session that gave me new tools and practical, actionable tips on how to implement the ideas covered in the session. What an insightful session. It was more research-based than I expected it to be, and I actually really appreciated that about it. Please keep offering this in the future. Also, I think we should try to incorporate it and learn it in our required curriculum too. It was interesting to use library skills to research claims. However, I think I had a different expectation or different expectations for this course. However, I still really liked it. This session should be integrated into the curriculum. It was informative and eye-opening, and more people should be able to experience it. And I really liked getting to spend some time with our librarians, and it was nice to see how much they know and what a great resource they will be. So this is all much more glowing than what we had heard from the previous enrichment session. So where do we go from here? Luckily, we can repeat this session every year if we want, because it'll always be new students coming in, and that's what we're planning for now. We do want to continue to improve the session, though. So we'll be talking with our critical pedagogy and research librarian to see what improvements she might like to see, or to see if she would be interested in co-teaching a session at some point. That collaborative nature I mentioned before means it doesn't always have to be me and Pam teaching this course just because we started it. We also want to partner with someone from the clinical faculty. This idea came from one comment in the student feedback, and it made a lot of sense to us. None of us are medically trained, so having that perspective would be a great addition. And we'll continue to work on ideas for other sessions. We have a large collection of medical illustrations that we've digitized and put online, and an interested, though terribly busy anatomy faculty member who is on board for something in the future. Perhaps we'll even get students interested in the archive's holdings at some point. For now, that's all I've got. Thanks for listening, and feel free to reach out if you have ideas to share or want to compare notes on med students. Thanks.
And I think Chris has been able to join us. So our third speaker is here. We will have time for Q&A after. So if you've got questions, hold on to those and we will talk about them in a bit.
Thank you very much. Okay. Do you want to bring up the slides or?
Give me
Want me to
one
share?
moment. You can go ahead and share them. You should be able to.
Okay. Let's see. I've had to use a different computer, so I was wondering if you could bring up the slides.
Yeah, let me download them real quick.
Okay.
Technology, everyone's favorite. Bear with me for a moment, everybody.
Yeah, certainly was a bear for me just now.
No.
Let's see if I can do it.
I just almost got it. PowerPoint is like, hey, what you doing there?
Yeah.
Nope, that's not what I'm sharing. I think we got it.
Okay, that looks good.
I will mute.
Okay, and I can navigate it back and forth, I guess.
You just let me know, and I will navigate for you.
Okay, so our presentation now is using UDC's literary treasures to teach archival literacy and literary criticism. And so we can go next. And I'm Chris Anglem, Professor Chris Anglem. I'm the archivist and reference librarian at the University of the District of Columbia, which is both a longtime HBCU and is also now an emerging Hispanic Service Institute as well. Okay, next. And in teaching archival literacy in the context of also teaching literary criticism, archival literacy, as we all know, refers to the knowledge and skills needed to effectively find, evaluate, and use materials held in archives. It helps develop the ability to critically analyze and interpret the primary sources needed in academic instruction and research. Okay, next. In introducing archival and information literacy to students learning literary criticism, our efforts is to help UDC English faculty teach literary criticism and to assist the student currently serving on the literary journal staff learn how to use the archives to answer to both to be inspired by the archives, by the literary tradition of the institution, and to continue on with their research and so on. Our archives houses many of the literary journals that have been published by UDC and its predecessor institutions over the years, including The Talisman by William Wilson Teachers College, The Slave Speaks by Federal City College, both the predecessor institutions, and The Phoenix, which is currently published by UDC. Our presentation focus on the work of the writers, which with UDC connections, both faculty and former students, and how they contribute to the discipline of literary criticism and how they progressed in their careers over the years. We also had produced a UDC Writer's Guide, which is a selective guide and a starting point for many of UDC's most prominent writers. So move on to the next slide, please. And so this is the UDC Writer's Guide that I've worked on with some of my colleagues in order to help provide a background on many of the literary grades that taught at one time at UDC or were students at UDC. So they include people like Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, and both current and past literary grades who graced UDC and its predecessor institutions over the years. Next. Okay. So the goals of our instruction of combining teaching archival literacy and literary criticism is to inspire students by introducing significant examples of work by previous UDC students and faculty, introduce several different representative writing models, enhance student research and writing skills, introduce archives and archival research for many of these students. This is the first time that they've had to deal with primary sources such as archives and dealing with archive repositories, and to engage and design engaging assignments to help the students continue to be engaged and become interested in the topics that we're teaching them. Okay, next. In our class activities and assignments, we develop several activities and assignments that are intended to enhance student understanding of archival practice while also integrating literary criticism through the use of the UDC literary works that were found both in literary journals and also through the literary productions that were produced in student newspapers and other student publications through quite a bit of digging through our archives with student assistance in order to create these assignments. Okay, next. In some of our class activities, we included next please. We included a creative, we have used creative response workshops. The activity here is that students select prose or poetry from archival sources and write a creative response, such as a poem, short story, or essay, inspired by the prose or poetry that they use. The goal here is to encourage students to engage deeply with the text that they read, and the outcome should be to share the responses and discuss influences and interpretations. Next. So another activity would be to have a literary criticism debate. Here we have a debate on several different literary theories. They can be on feminism, post-colonialism, Marxist interpretation as they apply to selected works from the archives that the group was to review and come up with a position basically on the question that is the matter of the debate. The whole idea behind this, or the goal behind this, is to foster critical thinking and discussion on how different viewpoints affect student understanding, with the outcome being analytical skills and insights, help develop the students develop analytical skills and insights into the various meanings that would be found in a particular work. Okay, next. And then archival exploration. The activity here is to take the students to the archives and teach them how to use archives, how they can select, find, access, and analyze materials that would be of interest to them. The goal here is to provide a practical experience with archival research and techniques, with the outcome being that the students would be able to create a brief report that shares their findings and reflections on particular issues, and then have a discussion on the various between the students of the various outcomes that they had come up with the various works that they read. Okay, next. And then some of the class assignments would include the student curatorial projects. These would be, the assignment would be to design a virtual exhibit of selected works from the archives, including a rationale for the choices that the students made and critical commentary. The goal is to encourage creativity and application of archival theory to student work that they've done on the various literary criticism. The outcome here is to present the exhibit of curatorial work to the class. And the next step, where do we go from here? And or the next steps is that we hope to continue to work with on collaborative projects and initiatives with joint exhibits, creating or hosting traveling exhibits that highlight the history, literature, and cultural contributions of historically unrepresented groups. Okay, next slide. And then we also hope to continue to create a digital archives to develop shared digital collections focusing on, for example, African American history and also diaspora, the African American history and diaspora. And we would hope to also focus, in addition to African American, also the literary works of other underrepresented groups. So that is my presentation.